I'm going to tell you a story that begins on an ordinary day, a day so normal that anyone would swear they had lived it before. The sky was clear, the streets vibrated with the same routine as always, and I was walking to work, unaware that time was about to break. It all started with a simple detail: the sound of the same car braking at the corner, the same laughter of the newspaper vendor, the same dog crossing in front of me. I thought it was a coincidence, but as I moved forward, I felt strange. Upon arriving at the office, I realized something was wrong. I greeted my coworkers, received the same greeting, and saw the same conversations repeat word for word. It was like watching an endless echo that no one else seemed to hear. By noon, the feeling intensified. I looked at the clock and saw it read 11:11. I closed my eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and when I opened them, everything repeated from the start of the morning. Me on the same street, the same car, the same laughter, the same dog. The day was ending. At first, I tried to ignore it, tried to continue as if nothing was happening, but the repetition was perfect and cruel. If I spoke to someone, they responded the same as in the previous cycle. If I made a different decision, the world seemed to correct me, pushing me toward the same ending I'd seen over and over again. The third time the day restarted, I felt real fear. If I couldn't break the pattern, I might be trapped forever. So I decided to observe every detail, to look for a mistake, a crack. I decided to walk in the opposite direction, decided not to go to the office, decided to change every step and every word. If time insisted on repeating itself, I would insist on breaking it. And thus began my struggle against a day that refused to end. When the day restarted for the fourth time, I no longer felt surprise, but rather a bitter mix of resignation and rebellion. I woke up to the identical sound of the alarm clock, with the same light streaming through the window, with the smell of coffee that never quite tasted different. But this time, I didn't leave the house immediately. I stayed watching the hands of the clock, waiting for the exact moment when everything used to start over. 11:11, always 11:11, as if the universe had run out of new pages. From that moment on, I resolved to record every loop, every word, and every decision to understand how repetition worked. I stepped out onto the street with a notebook in hand and noted the screech of the red car, the laughter of the vendor, the dog that crossed distractedly. I tried to interact with them in different ways. I shouted, I kept silent, I ran, I stopped, but the cycle always returned to the same beginning. I then discovered something disturbing. If I tried too hard to force change, the world began to distort. Voices became flatter, colors faded, as if the very fabric of time was defending itself. On the sixth restart, I tried talking to a woman who always passed by me with a bouquet of wilted flowers. I asked her name, and this time she answered something different. The air vibrated, the sky trembled slightly, and her voice seemed to come from a place outside the repeated day. She told me she was also trapped. That minimal alteration was like a crack in the eternal glass. I knew there was hope, I knew I was not alone, and I knew that an exit could exist if I kept searching. But to break the cycle, I would have to find a reason for its existence. Her name was Elisa, and she claimed to have lived the same day hundreds of times before crossing paths with me. I then realized that time not only played with me, but also ensnared others. We talked in an empty park, far from the repetitive noise that filled the streets. She spoke calmly, as if she knew secrets that I was just beginning to sense. She explained that the recurrence was not coincidental, that there existed a key point, a tiny instant where the day could break apart. According to her, everything always happened the same way, because there was something that needed to be seen, something that time insisted on showing until we understood it. She asked me to remember every variation, every detail that could differentiate one cycle from the next. During the following resets, we walked together, tried unknown routes, crossed squares that always seemed both new and old at the same time. Each dawn appeared identical, but Elisa's presence turned the repetition into a territory full of clues. I began to notice things I had previously ignored, like a tiny lighthouse on the horizon that I had never looked at, or the distant sound of a train that shouldn't exist in the city. Something in the air seemed to whisper that the answer was hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to dare to see it without fear. There was a moment when the day seemed to laugh because something had changed. Elisa told me we needed to find that point together. We decided to explore the city differently with each reset, searching for an element that did not belong to the pattern. On the 10th reset, we saw a shadow among the people, someone who seemed to move freely. We followed him and discovered that he was a faceless man, an observer watching us from the edge of time. Elisa believed he was the key, a piece outside the puzzle. We were convinced that the faceless man was the crack in the repetition. Every day, when the clock struck 11:11 and the cycle restarted, he appeared at a different point in the city, as if he were observing our progress. We tried to get closer, but every time we approached too much, the world trembled and the day violently began anew, throwing us back to the same dawn. We could not touch him, we could not speak to him, but we could follow him. We learned his route patiently, noting his steps at each restart until we memorized every corner. It was like chasing a shadow aware of our presence, a figure that knew we sought to break the eternal routine. We followed him to a neighborhood we had never seen, a place that did not exist until we began to notice it. The houses were identical, the faces repeated like masks, but there the air felt different, as if time were breathing. The faceless man stopped in front of an abandoned lighthouse, and when he raised his hand, it seemed he was inviting us to continue. With each cycle, we got a little closer before everything began again. The lighthouse, once invisible, became our only hope. We tried to enter many times, but the door always vanished when minutes were left before the restart. Elisa said the key was to arrive early, to understand why the lighthouse existed only in certain loops. So we ran from dawn, not stopping, ignoring every distraction programmed by the repeated day. In the 19th restart, we knocked on the door. In the 20th, we pushed it. In the 21st, we managed to open it for a second before being dragged back to the beginning. I no longer knew if we were moving forward or if time was playing with us, but each attempt gave us more strength. Elisa smiled even when the world collapsed into white, confident that we were close. In the 22nd restart, we felt something different. In the 22nd reset, we felt that something had given way in the eternal machinery. The dawn didn't smell the same. The wind carried a murmur that hadn't existed before. We ran straight to the lighthouse without looking back, certain that the rupture was imminent. The door stood firm, and upon crossing it, we discovered a spiral staircase leading up to the unknown. Each step resonated as if we were treading the same hour repeated 1,000 times. We ascended in silence, only with our hearts racing and fear beating like a second heart. At the top, a circular room awaited us, filled with stopped clocks, all marking different moments of the same day. In the center, a suspended hourglass hung, frozen between two eternities. The faceless man appeared before us, motionless, as if he were part of the mechanism of time. Elisa stepped forward and extended her hand. The man allowed her to touch the hourglass. A deep sound crossed the air, like glass shattering under the weight of centuries. The clocks began to spin in opposite directions, and the sand finally descended, grain by grain. I felt the world loosen, the streets melting like ink on wet paper. Elisa looked at me with a calm smile and said that every repetition had been necessary to arrive there. I tried to take her hand, but her figure faded with the flow of the sand.